right. Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Rhody Rumble podcast. Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, the voice of the Vermont Mountaineers, man that wears definitely many caps. Like I said, a good friend of mine. Really got the chance to know him a lot last year. Noah McLane. Noah, how you doing today?
Adam, I'm doing pretty well, man. Can't complain. You and me, we've done a couple of broadcasts together, and I've seen a lot of your episodes, and it's a pleasure to be here, man. I thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, and it's a pleasure having you on the show. Like you said, let's talk a little bit about how your summer's going. I know you've been working in the NECBL with the Vermont Mountaineers. Talk to me a little bit about your role there.
Yeah, so I was the head broadcaster for the Vermont Mountaineers in the NECBL, as you said. The NECBL is obviously a New England league, 14 teams, and I had the opportunity to call 48 games this summer, home and away, which was a wonderful opportunity. It's not often, you and I were talking before this, that you get to be that involved with a team, especially at an age only going into my sophomore year. So it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up on. It was a development of my skills, and then also just a development of being able to give back to an organization that I grew up, only 10 minutes down the road from this team. And I grew up going to their camps and everything like that, and watching this team. And I fell in love with this team, at a young age. So it was just a wonderful opportunity to be able to call games for them.
Yeah, 100%. Sounds like it. I like to do these podcasts, sort of in chronological order, sort of work your way to where you are now. So we'll start, with where you're from. You are from Vermont. You mentioned, you grew up sort of following and, being surrounded by this team, the Mountaineers. But talk to me a little bit about, where that love or that passion came for sports. How did you feel connected to it from a young age? And then, maybe what ways you were exposed to it just being from Vermont.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I show up to campus. Everyone's like Vermont. I've actually had people say, "Is that in New York or something?" Like, it's funny. But being from Vermont, I grew up playing sports. Actually, my first word besides mom, dad, the basic things was ball. That's crazy. I feel like it's super fitting. Ever since literally since I could speak, I wanted to be around anything sports related. I grew up playing soccer. I grew up playing t-ball, basketball. I just really fell in love with any sport that I could get my hands on. It didn't really matter. I played Frisbee when I was in middle school. Being in Vermont, I went to a D2 high school and had a lot of opportunities to play pretty competitive sports, actually. In other states, it might not be the most competitive comparatively. But nonetheless, for our state, we competed at a really high level. We played a lot of D1 teams and beat a lot of D1 teams. And that was really cool to be able to experience that as a, quote unquote, smaller school. So that was really cool. And that's kind of where it came from. My dad introduced me to a lot of things, and my mom loves tennis and everything like that. And she was a ball girl for years with tennis. And so both my parents were around sports and just kind of passed along the love, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about, I guess just being around sports from such a young age, growing up in Vermont and all that, and then coming to the University of Rhode Island, obviously sports media being introduced as a major just a few years back. Obviously we all kind of have that realization, it may not work out at the Division I or the collegiate level, or, go on to play professionally. But, what was it about media and really that aspect of covering teams and covering athletes? I guess just sort of, telling a story that really stood out to you that, you really thought, I want to go into this industry someday.
Yeah. I think it really started in 2013. With the Boston Red Sox. I'm a diehard Red Sox fan. I grew up listening to them. For those who don't know, being from Vermont, I don't have a lot of access to TV and internet, things like that. Now I do a little bit more than I did as a kid, but really my only access as a kid was listening to games on the radio. So growing up, I listened to Dave O'Brien and Joe Castiglione. And in those season of 2013, I listened to, I think, at least bits and pieces of every single game, except for the one I went to on Father's Day, and then maybe watched a couple when they went to the World Series, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to see this, like actually. But like part of me was like, I want to see it, but also I listened to the couple. I chose to listen to a couple of the World Series games because I was just like, this is what really is my passion, and it's not the same when I've listened to these guys all season long. And I think that was the real like first time I was just like, holy crap, this might be the real thing that I want to do. Like as you said, everyone comes to a realization, and it might not have been then where I totally realized that I wasn't going to be able to compete at a Division I level. I still had dreams back then, but I think it was probably then. I grew up always messing around, just in the backyard by myself, just broadcasting a imaginary game, playing basketball by myself, and I just always loved it, and it turned out to be something that I was fairly good at. And it was a passion of mine where I was able to stay involved with things that I love.
Yeah. A question that I love to ask on this podcast is really just what motivates you, or, what is your why?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is just I think my family is one. I always want to make my parents proud. They've done a lot for me. And going back to when I did play sports, they did a ton for me, and now they're giving me this opportunity to be able to go to college, which is awesome, and be at the University of Rhode Island. And then I think also just like I'm trying to prove a lot of people wrong. I think being from Vermont, a lot of people are like, are you even going to have a shot at anything? And, they're like, oh, you must do some small radio stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I started. But, like I've been so fortunate to be able to like already call games, with you and others on ESPN Plus and some FM games. And, obviously the Mountaineers this season, when you do 48 games for one team and you get that much exposure, you start to talk to people and meet people that are high up in this industry. And just being able to say like, yeah, like I might be from a town of, 1,000 people, but like, it doesn't matter. I have this drive, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm here to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's really where we have, the same mindset, and that's really where we connect the most. And, that makes our dynamic so special, is that we both have the same purpose, the same meaning. And it's that we want to get into this industry. We want to be successful. I think the thing that's so cool about, this industry, and you kind of said it already, is that you're going to meet so many different people. Even this summer for me, I interned at Madison Square Garden, in New York City. And I just met so many people on the back end of things, internally, then also externally at games, concerts, events, everything like that. The ability to travel. I think all of that really is just a add on to what this industry has to offer. But really it's, doing what we love. And I think another thing that stood out to me, well, what you said, is just proving people wrong and, proving the doubters. That's something special for me as well, because clearly I'm not an athlete. If you look at me, I'm not built like an athlete, but I did play sports growing up. Athletically, I was okay. I was a pretty good tennis player, but I think the thing that really stood out to me was, I'm a good writer. I love sports. I'm connected to it. And I think essentially for everyone, and I think it's most relatable in the last few years, is that it's an escape from reality. Everything that we're going on, that's going on in the world really today. We have sports that help us, get through it. So I think for us, just the ability to, go down to the Ryan Center or, Keeney Gym or even Meade Stadium and call a game, it goes a long way, and you never know who's looking at that or watching that. So it's definitely special, what you've accomplished and, what we're doing here and what the Harrington School really has to offer for its students. So definitely seeing that. I guess just to recap your freshman year, are there any, special points that stood out to you, or moments or stories or anything like that at URI that stood out to you?
I mean, I mean, like I said, being a freshman at URI and coming in, not really knowing what the opportunities were going to be like. I met you, and I met, I have to give credit where credit's due. Zach Austin got me involved in WRIU. And that was awesome. And that was kind of my starting point. And then like, I think it was a month and a half in, I got asked to broadcast and do play-by-play, not only, broadcast and be a color or a host, but do play-by-play for ESPN Plus for a women's soccer game. And it was like, wow, like this is crazy. I didn't know what I was getting into when I went to URI, and I had done some games for RIU, and being able to just get involved that early was a highlight like no other. And I think also just being able to, no matter what station I'm calling on or whatever it is, it's just like I love to do it. I love to be around the games. It's so fun, and I'm doing love, and I think that was the most special thing about coming to URI, and that was just like the overall highlight in general is just I'm able to do what I love, and now I'm pursuing, both broadcasting and just like classes are dedicated to that, and obviously some are not dedicated to that, but a lot of them I get to choose now and say like, this is my passion, this is where it is, this is what I'm paying to do, and what I want to be good at. And I think having that source of freedom to explore the options that the university has to offer me, which are plentiful, I should add, was just a blessing immediately.
Yeah, and I think that's just another great thing about the Harrington School. It really gives its students, freedom to, test the waters, test different things out. You may not like doing something, you may love doing something. Radio may not be for you, or TV may be for you, vice versa. So I think that's great. The best way to get involved is, just being available and, show. I guess the best thing that I learned was your best ability is availability. So, going to those broadcasts and going down to the Ryan Center, even taking a women's soccer game that, yeah, okay, it may not get the most media, exposure, but covering something like that will get your foot in the door and, help, kickstart your career. I think that's so important. When you just reflect on, 1 year and what you were able to accomplish in your freshman year. My freshman year was cut short. So yeah, I had a few, WRU broadcasts here and there. I think they were all in RA too, actually, because I had to work my way up the ladder. A couple of women's basketball games, and the program was not where it's at now. So, just getting exposed to doing color and host for that was exciting. And then COVID hit, and whole other story. I had no other choice but to start this podcast. And then before you know it, I'm the FM sports director, and here we go. You're a junior and you keep going forward. So making the most of the 4 years at URI is definitely important. You're definitely doing that in just your freshman year. I guess to leave off as we, get started into the next year and really the beginning of your sophomore year, what are you most looking forward to this year?
Yeah, looking forward to, I would say, I actually just had Dave reach out to me. For those who don't know, it's the guy that runs the ESPN stuff at URI. He sent out the spreadsheet. He just texted me today and was like, "Hey, Noah, we want you to come back. We're super excited. Do you have interest in doing this?" And I
just received that message as well, by the way.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Exactly. And I was so excited, and it felt really special. I'm sure he reached out to most of the people that did it, but just to be able to be on that list again, to be able to have him reach out not only with the spreadsheet in the email, but also with a text, just being like, "Hey, man, we really enjoyed your stuff, and we want you to come back." Is it's really something that makes me humbled, and makes me excited too. And it's awesome, because again, being from Vermont, it's a lot of small towns, it's a lot of tight-knit communities, and I have a lot of people here, even friends my age, that would tune in to and stuff like that when you and I were calling them this past spring, and the questions summer were full. Hey, end games again is really special. So
yeah, I think I lost you a little bit at the end there, but I sort of got what you were saying. Just getting that support and getting people to tune into the broadcast. That's what's most exciting. And like I said, the best ability you're going to get is availability, and showing Dave and Zach and everyone else at WRIU and ESPN Plus that you're available and you want to take part in these broadcasts, whether it's a volleyball game or a men's basketball game. You have to come in with the same mindset. You have to be excited about it. And, like I said, it's our passion. It's what we love to do. So there's no reason not to be excited about it. As you do more and more broadcasts, and you sort of evolve yourself as a broadcaster or a commentator, would you say you model your style or your game essentially after any broadcasters, or is that kind of bits and pieces from multiple that you've sort of made into your own style?
There's definitely some mixes of things, but I love to have my own style. I love to come up with my own phrases. I love that kind of thing, to make it like, professional, and use bits and pieces of advice and broadcasts that I've heard and listened to, and know that people will enjoy, and also to make it so that, it's my broadcast, so to say. So people are like, oh yeah, like I want to turn on FM radio tonight and hear Noah McLane and Adam Bernstein, because they have, their own style of thing. And, like when I was in class this last year with Introduction to Sports Broadcasting, which was a great class with Don Coyne, we had an opportunity to work on a lot of different things: writing, podcasts, play-by-play things. And in the play-by-play things, Professor Coyne came out and was like, hey, some people didn't like this, and some people, I'm going to be straight honest with you, were not good at it. And he was just like, I can tell Noah, he has a lot of passion for this. He uses energy. He uses funny phrases, all these things. And it was really cool for me to be able to have my professor hear that, and my passion. That was the goal, to just have, again, that's another person with a lot of connections. He's done a lot of things in sports, and, like you said, the connections are really where it's at in this industry. You are going to meet so many people, and that's where you're going to build your relationships and your ability to get to where you want to get in the long run. And, but yeah, like it was cool because he heard the passion that I had, and I like to use energy, and, it's been a balance of like, okay, where do I implement downtime and, just a casual broadcast, and then bring the energy up and things like that. And that's been something that I've worked on. And I think, especially with being able to call 48 games this past summer, with baseball, there's a lot of downtime. So that was also another thing where I was like, great, this is an opportunity for me to bring in storytelling, to bring in, a more mellow, conversational aspect of broadcasting, which is a huge part of what we do. And then also be able to use my excitement and energetic thing to make sure that listeners, even in those mellow points, are engaged and they're listening. And I'll keep this story short here, but, I had the commissioner of the NECBL come up to me during the championship series, and he said, hey, in your loss, 16-2 was the score of the first game of the championship series, and we lost 26 guys from the beginning of the season. And obviously we recruited new guys and things like that, but we lost a lot of talent in our unbelievable season. And we're so fortunate that we had guys just grit it out and make it to the championship series. But, again, he came up to me and he was like, I listened to that entire game, and I did most of it by myself because the broadcaster from the team that we were playing actually left, and they had just a guy filling in, and he was in and out of the booth a little bit. But he said, you kept it interesting. And that made me so happy, because I was like, man, I hope that people aren't turning us off, because, this is such a special moment where we work for in this industry. These players work for these families who are wanting to watch and listen to their kids play during, even if it is summer ball, once it's playoff time, and it's an opportunity for these players to really showcase themselves. And for me to be able to keep that interesting in a score like that. And I hadn't really been a part of that because we didn't get beat much this season. We only lost 12 games. We were, oh man, by the end of the season, I think our final record was like 34 or 35-12 or 35-13 or something like that. So we didn't lose much. We only lost twice in the entire month of June, which was an incredible experience. But just to be able to keep things interesting and make, listeners be engaged in something like that was really special to know that I was able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the nail with just a couple of points that you said there that I want to shout out. The first one is just being engaged. I think as a broadcaster, you need to keep the audience engaged, whether the score is 16-2 or it's 3-2 heading into the bottom of the ninth, that's so important. And I think also another thing was just connections and networking. I learned a lot of that actually at my internship. It's not about, what essentially. It's more about who especially when you're getting jobs. I know you hear it all the time. It's so cliche, but it's really the truth. It's important to know things, and obviously you want to, have a good head on your shoulders, but you're not going to get a job if you don't have connections, or you're not going to get, I guess, a reputable company, hiring you or looking at you if you don't have connections already at the company or in the industry. So just to have, that experience before we transition to more of that, with the NECBL and the Vermont Mountaineers, you've made so many connections. I'm sure some you probably didn't even realize you made until afterward, now reflecting on it. So just to kind of think about that, and I do the same with my internship and kind of, I guess, reflect. You're really learning so much every single day, and it's just, again, goes back to, what our passion is. And I always say and I feel the same way after the WRU broadcast, the ESPN Plus broadcast. I remember after my first one, I'll tell you a quick story. It was actually my sophomore year, so the year before this past year. We were in the Ryan Center. It was just me and one other guy. He had graduated, and we were doing a game. Just me and the cardboard cutouts. The Rams were having a tough season. Tumbleweeds going by. It was empty, but really, I walked out of there and I was like, "This is so cool!" Just to say, and that was my first men's basketball game. Like I said, I didn't have the opportunity because the year got cut short my freshman year. And I think they might have lost too, but just to say, a program that I grew up watching, men's basketball team for Rhode Island, the chance I had to do, color or host, I think we didn't even have a host because of social distance regulations and everything like that. The NCAA put in place. But yeah, no, I mean, just to say that I was one of maybe 8 guys in media. And another one was this past year, going to PC, going to the dunk. And unfortunately the technology, didn't work out for us. We weren't able to broadcast, but sitting baseline and, watching, again, you or I had lost in that instance, but being there in a professional setting and getting this exposure, it's things that, you're never going to forget, especially at 19, 20 years old and being in college. And it's crazy because I tell myself, if you do what you love, you're never going to work a day in your life. And it's really the truth. So
amen. Amen to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's transition a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about this season. You talked a little bit about it in the previous answer, but, only 12 losses, making it to the championship series. Talk to me a little bit about, more of on a personal level, how the experience was for you, and then also the performance on the field of, how the team did success-wise.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've touched on it a little bit, but again, it was like 48 games, I think, was the total amount, including playoffs, that I was able to call. Reflection was pretty much unavailable during the season because it was go every day. So for those of you who don't know, it was a 42 game regular season over the span of June and July. So when an off day came around, it was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I don't have to broadcast today, or I'm not going and the team's not playing today. It was an everyday thing, and I was involved with programs and broadcasting, obviously, and obviously also I was I wanted to help in any way I could, and I grew up doing a lot of jobs for the team. I parked cars when I was a kid. I did on the field games, and this year I even did field work. I was on the field multiple times before games, making sure that field was ready after heavy rains or something a few hours before games to make sure that we could play, because I wanted to play. I wanted to broadcast. I wanted those guys to get the opportunities that they were there to do. And it was unbelievable. As you said, just repetitions and availability, and I'm there and I made the programs and I did all this work. Why would I not want to be here and do this? This is what I was hired to do. This is what I want to do. And in terms of success, there was a lot of it this year. There was a lot of talent. We came into this year not really knowing what this team was going to be like, and we were kind of actually underdogs to begin the season. We did not have a single Power 5 player on our roster, and it was a lot of smaller schools. Stetson, Fairleigh Dickinson. We had a couple. George Washington, Hofstra, things like that. That are not these top-notch schools. And of course, this is not to diminish any of those programs, but this is not Tennessee. It's not Kentucky. It's not Alabama, Ole Miss, whoever it may be. And the guys were wonderful. And I think what it was is the chemistry between players was the most incredible thing to watch this season, because it didn't matter who came in. And like I mentioned, I think it was a total of 26 guys that we ran through that left the program for one reason or another. And it didn't matter whoever came in, everybody got along. There was really no negative atmosphere in anything this year. And one thing to note is also we had an insanely young coaching staff this year. Our head coach, 22, and our 2 assistants, 24 and 25. So I was the youngest member of the organization at 19 years old. But to say I'm only 3 years younger than the head coach who had a 30 plus win season and brought his team in the first season of a head coach to the NECBL title. It was awesome to experience because it was a first for a lot of guys, and myself included, and it was really cool. But like I said, 2 losses in June. We got to the championship. We came up 2 games short, and we were so down with arms and things. It was really unfortunate that that's how it came down to, that we weren't able to put our best roster on the field. From what we might not have had, but you got to give a tip of the cap to every single one of those guys. I mean, we had guys that played right field come in and pitch, and they did phenomenal. And that was the thing is they made the most out of the opportunity that they had, and me being able to broadcast and kind of be like, okay, this is on the fly. There's no numbers here. This dude has never seen the mound since his junior year of high school. I got to adjust on the fly.
Did they have live stats at all, or?
Yes. But like in terms of like pitching numbers, this guy's never thrown for us. But yes, I had access to live stats, and we had at our field, we had the radar gun up on the scoreboard so we could see what guys were throwing. And it was cool. We were very fortunate. We are one of the better media production wise teams in the NECBL. There's a couple teams Newport is undoubtedly the best. The Newport goals do at Camden Field is it's unbelievable. It was just unbelievable to be able to broadcast there with a guy from Syracuse, and then actually a URI student was also on color, Shane Briggs, who's a student that I had classes with this past year and had an opportunity to call games with him. But it was cool with the success and the learning on my end and the exposure, the relationships with the guys.
I think I lost you there a little bit towards the end. But you were pretty much just saying how it was cool to have those relationships as a broadcaster, and just based off of the answer that you gave there, just talking a little bit first with the success. You talk about being on your toes, staying on your toes, and being flexible, and the players really were thrown into the fire a little bit with that. You talk about 26 players over the span of, let's just say, 60 days coming in and out of, or leaving the team, and then more guys constantly coming in. But chemistry is so important throughout sports, and it seems like throughout they were able to have that. So that's super impressive. And to be a part of that, just 19 years old as well, is also very impressive. But going back to on a personal level, 42 games. It was 42, right?
Yep.
42 games in a span of 60 days. I mean, you must have, came across a couple of challenges with this. Obviously, again, being thrown into the fire, a lot of firsts here, first-time head coach, some first, summer league players, and you being a first-time broadcaster for the team. What were some of the, major challenges or obstacles that you had to overcome? Really, what are some takeaways that you learned over these 2 months that, I believe, or you believe, will make you a better broadcaster?
Yeah. So I think a lot of my challenges came from not maybe as much on the broadcast side of things, but I had to write up programs every day, and getting used to that template of, developing these things and making sure that there are no errors and all the dates are right and they're changed every single day, and all these things, the logos are correct, the sponsorships are correct, because these sponsors are going to come, they're going to see these things. The people at the games, they want to see these stats, they want to see everything. So it really was a thing for me to get used to be like, okay, I have to spend at the beginning of the season, before, when we played the team the first time, I had to manually enter in every single player from both rosters. And of course, the Mountaineers, their rosters stayed the same somewhat. So I had that roster. But, when we played the Sharks for the first time, I would have to enter in their names, their numbers, their positions, their height, their weight, their hometown, their college. And that takes a long time. And you got to make sure that it's not wrong. And, sometimes, you're like, oh, I messed up. that was a mistake, and I have to make sure that I catch that. And if there is a mistake, that I tell the PA announcers so that everybody is on the same page and everybody is properly announced and everyone is getting the respect that they deserve. Because, this team, I did broadcast in Vermont, and some people might be like, oh, it's just the Vermont Mountaineers, but the NECBL is said to be arguably the second best league for college baseball in the summer, behind only the Cape League. And there's a lot of good leagues, don't get me wrong. But the NECBL brings in a lot of talent. And there was teams with those guys, from top-notch schools. But, back to the challenges, I think it's that was something, and I really worked on my writing with post games and things like that, and making it so that it was in a style that was correct, that was right, that was readable, that was engaging, and just overall just interesting for everybody. That it wasn't something that it's just like, okay, I'm putting this out and it's done. It's like, okay, you want somebody to read this and be like, yeah, okay, I understand. I missed Tuesday night's game. Here's a recap. It may not be 2 pages, but it's 4 paragraphs of a recap. And it's like, all right, I got a general sense of what happened. And in June, it's probably just, again, Mountaineers are on a 9-game win streak, but then again, you still, again, and that's the whole thing, is like, you got to make that interesting. Right. Even if they win over and over and over again, you got to figure out ways. And sometimes it wasn't 10-1 or, that many runs. Sometimes it was a 1-0 win. And what do you say in a 1-0 win?
Yeah, it just goes back to keeping the audience engaged. And
right.
Yeah, 100%. Again, you hit it on the nail there. I think a thing that I learned with this internship, and I've really learned over the last, few months or a year or so, is that wherever you land in this industry, you have to know how to write. That is such a skill, whether you're a producer, whether you're a sports anchor and you're writing your own scripts, or whether you're a broadcaster or even a podcaster and you have to write the script of questions. In this case, probably not, because this was spontaneous. But, you have to learn how to be on the fly, and you have to learn how to write. You have to learn, how to talk, how to communicate. But I think a thing that I love so much about, your work ethic is that you keep going. I feel like that's a similarity that we have, and another reason why, our dynamic flows a lot on the broadcast, that we keep going. Obviously there's going to be the mistakes and the mess ups, the challenges, but you just have to keep going throughout and, not worry about those. I think I probably messed up a few names even after looking at the pronunciation guides, in the 3 years that I've been at URI, but just keep going, learn how to, overcome that, and then maybe, reassess and learn how to, get better and improve. There's always room for improvement. And I feel like that's a thing that you really, focus on and emphasize in your style, and just, based off of working with you and also listening to you. So I did catch a few of those broadcasts this summer on Twitter and everything like that. So, awesome job. I'm looking forward to, working with you again, this year. It's my last year, but future is definitely bright for you, man. I'm looking forward to it. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm certainly looking forward to getting back to school in a few weeks here and being on the mic with you too. And yeah, yes. And that's, I appreciate the kind words, and the same goes to you. And I definitely would agree that, you and I are similar in what we want to do, and similar in the ways that we go about it. So, and this is something that, I've watched you do only for the past year, but it's been really awesome to be able to be like, okay, I can do that too. And I got on a couple of podcasts. Maybe they weren't sports broadcasts, but it was, I am just doing something where I'm communicating. And that's the whole thing, is people, like, my focus is broadcasting, but it's like communications is the major. And it's like, as long as you can have a conversation with someone, that's going to get you a whole long way in this industry. And that might not be getting you on a mic, but that might get you a job doing something else, to work your way up to that point. And that's what's so awesome about this industry. And that's where I feel like I and you as well, both, just shine in that element, because we're able to hold conversation. We're able to go up to that athletic director or the head coach of URI, or the Mountaineers or whatever, or the commissioner, and say, hey, listen, here's my name. Here's what I want to do. What do you need from me? And
Put yourself out there.
how can I get involved, you know?
Yeah, put yourself out there. That's what it's all about. And I think the thing that I've learned the most with podcasting, and even it overlaps into broadcasting, is what you just said there, learning how to have a conversation. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm on here, I forget I'm even recording. I think maybe once in this recording. I know, we usually do this where we probably talk, every couple months when it's at school. It's probably a weekly thing, or maybe a couple of times a week where we're just talking on the phone. Feels like for hours. So learning how to have those and hold those conversations and putting yourself out there, definitely something. And then I think the other thing with a podcast, at least for me, is that you have to learn how to make the most of, and excuse my language here, but a shitty situation. I mean, again, I came in doing this in 2020, the start of my sophomore year. There weren't any opportunities on campus at all. I went from broadcasting a few games at WRU. I was looking forward to, maybe growing that into my sophomore year. I got, a few broadcasts, maybe a handful, 3 or 4 or 5, that year. But also, again, no one predicted a pandemic. So take advantage of the resources. Obviously, Zoom, get yourself a mic and go from there. You'll never, believe the connections that you've made in the year or two that I've been doing this. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely crazy. It's definitely crazy, but again, it's what we love to do. It's our passion. But one last question for you. I think a good question to end it on. For anyone who may be listening to this at home, I'm sure between the two of us, we can give plenty of advice, but maybe someone aspiring to get into broadcasting or looking to study sports media, or maybe even get into this industry. What is the best piece of advice, you could give someone, maybe watching at home?
Yeah, I mean, I was given this piece of advice, and I think it goes a long way. I'll pass it along. I was in a little bit of a conversation. I had an opportunity to go to a panel with Tim Neverett, Galen Carr, and Buster Olney, and those are some pretty big names. Obviously, Buster Olney does a lot for the MLB and everything like that, and he's actually from Vermont. So that's cool to see.
Didn't know that.
Another Vermonter that was, he's at the top. He is where you want to be. And he's got his own show. But a piece of advice that I got from Tim Neverett, who is now, I believe, with the Dodgers still, but he was with the Red Sox for a while. I listened to him and Joe Castiglione after Dave went to TV. But it was never close a door on an opportunity. And, that's kind of been said a few times in different words in this podcast. But, it goes back to my high school and even college. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have weird experiences. You're going to call sports that you know nothing about. It was junior year, and somebody came up to me and said, I have a girls lacrosse state championship game that I am interested in having you broadcast. And I was like, okay, sure. And I know nothing about girls lacrosse. I've watched a couple of games, but I don't know much about it. But the thing is that if I had a color person that I was like, okay, I think my color commentator is good enough in conversation and maybe knows a little bit more about the sport in order to keep things interesting. And that's just another repetition where now I can say, hey, I've called basketball, soccer, softball, lacrosse, hockey, anything like that. And it goes on. But, long story short, it's just always make yourself available and never close a door on an opportunity, I think is the best piece of advice that I can give, that I've followed. And I live by that religiously every day. Yeah.
100% agree with that. I think another one, and then, we'll end it right there. But I think another one is just you got to do, like I said, pick up the mic. You're only going to get better if you just do. And, no one wakes up in their, Jim Nance or anything like that. No one wakes up in their, anything like that. Or I don't know. You give me a name, anything like that. You just got to do, and over time, it'll happen. The success will come. And, we're still learning that every single day, but, it's why we do. It's because we love it. And like you said, if you love it, you never work a day in your life. So there it is right there. Noah McLane in the books. Appreciate you taking the time again. I'll see you in a few weeks. We'll be hanging out. We'll be keeping in touch. So And catch us on the broadcast too if you're watching this. We'll be on a few broadcasts, maybe Daily Ram or something like that. We'll run that back again. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, appreciate you taking the time. Looking forward to everything we're gonna accomplish and you're gonna accomplish this year. And yeah, go Rhody.
Adam, it was a pleasure being on. I thank you so much for having me. And, like you said, it's I'm super excited to be back at school with you and all the guys for sure. And just be back involved in this wonderful industry. And it's been a pleasure.
Yep. Appreciate it again.